anything that you can think of, anything, they were doing it. And apparently, according to Christ, it's going to, or whoever in the New Testament, it's going to go back to that. So imagine that. Being able to do anything, everything, all your sick perversions, whatever, right? And there's nobody that can stop you. Some out there like rubbing their hands, like, so I can do this, I can do that, I can get away with it, right? Yeah, only for so long. And then who do you stand before? God, and you face judgment, and like, whoop, down to the fiery furnace you go, matey. Yeah. Trapdoor opened. Yeah, okay, where are we? Yeah, so they did everything you can think of. Everything's sick, right? It's going to end up like that, supposedly. So as people keep pushing these legislations, oh, we want to do this, we want to be able to do this, it's our right, that. All that sort of stuff. And some, oh, we want their vote. Politicians, yeah, okay, well, okay, we're sympathetic for that. Oh, yeah, boo-hoo-hoo. Yeah. Now vote for us. That sort of thing. And then the people who got that legislation are like rubbing their hands, well, we can do this, we can do that. Even though other people oppose it. Well, you're breaking our rights. It's a law. You can't do that. How nasty are you? How mean are you to deprive us of our rights, all that sort of stuff? But then they say, well, you didn't have a right to preach God or Christ, right? And tell us. We're all about love and all that. Yeah, okay. And you're hating on us. Well, that's really lovely, isn't it? That's real love. Yeah, different factions like that, right? Okay, and the Lord said, I will wipe out the men I have created from the face of the earth, from human beings to the four-legged animals, from the crawlers to the birds of the sky, because I regretted having created them. Okay, 7. An expression he sighed over. It doesn't mean that he in that sense that, oh damn, I made a mistake. It's not saying that. He's just sighed over the condition that men put themselves in, and being out of the presence of him, turning away from him, and doing every imaginable sick thing. Yeah. And just kept doing it and kept doing it, right? Probably no matter what, even if Noah went out there with his family, whatever, and preached them, say, look, the end's coming, you're going to get wiped out soon. Repent, maybe take up a bit of space in our boat. No, get lost, mate. We're having too much fun. Leave us alone. All your fantasies, right? Up until that day when the doors closed and the rains came, they were like, yeah, mate, you're crazy, mate. You're dreaming, mate. Okay, so he gives them instructions to make the ark, according to size and all sorts of stuff, specifications. The Lord said, all flesh has gone mad before me, because the earth has been filled by abomination before them. See, he's basically talking now probably. I will abandon them to their madness together with the earth. Or he's actually talking to the others two in the triune Godhead. Make yourself an ark, Noah, of wood from the root, with curved chambers and so forth. And I shall look, I'll bring a deluge, a flood of water over the face of the earth, to undo every form of living flesh under the sky, and so that everyone on earth is drowned. And I shall make my stand with you, Noah, and you shall enter into the ark. It's like a covenant, right? A promise. Okay. So it's not saying the whole world. Okay, that's silly. Okay? Because you got Adam and Eve, Cain, then he goes into land of Nod. You got the pre-Adamics in the east, all that sort of stuff, and they're migrating, having descendants, sons and daughters, and more descendants, all that sort of stuff. So they're continually merging in the east. Okay? They're not like, well, okay, we've got so far in the east, now let's go over to China. Let's make a boat and go to China. Or let's go down to New Zealand, all that sort of stuff. None of that stuff yet. So when they're referring to the earth or the world, it's the world that they know of. Okay? It's like saying the Roman world or the Greek world. It's the world that was conquered by the Greeks and the Romans, etc. etc. That's the word that they know of. So it's like that vast area, of Earth. It's not global. But then you have the scientific version of the Great Flood, whatever happened, disaster. Maybe asteroid or a meteor came from outer space, according to them, so many thousands or millions of years ago, hit the Earth, caused a gigantic tidal wave, earthquakes, all this sort of stuff, volcanic action, and it wiped out, the North Pole, or that area, melted, right, and caused great flood and all that sort of stuff. That's what they're talking about. Okay, that was worldly. Okay? Then you have all these things happening in the Grand Canyon and evidence of all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it probably did, but at a different period. Okay, have a look at we have a book here somewhere called the Timetables of History by Bet Nahrein. There's about 3 or 4 of them that try to translate it from the German, but 2 or 3 of them died or something like that, and somebody eventually completed it. It's like page 3 or 8 or something, column B or something, and it says great disasters in the Mesopotamian region. And then you have Victor Alexander that verified it, come across it somewhere. Either he told us through an email or it's in his translation project somewhere, that it was floods in the Mesopotamian region, disastrous floods, etc., etc. We could find that book. It'd just take us a minute, I suppose, to find it, to verify that. Let's see if we can find it. Where is it? It's really somewhere. Okay, not there. Where is that book? There's book, so it shouldn't be that far away. I'm looking in the wrong place. But yeah, where is this book? Where is that book? Okay, not too sure where it is. Around somewhere. Just don't know where. Not too sure where it is. Okay. Let me see. Could it be? Is that it there? No? Oh my gosh, where the hell is this book? Okay. Looks like we'll have to find it later because it's got so many books and we don't know where that book is. Where the hell is it? It's around somewhere. Okay, and we'll probably just basically leave that link to it underneath this video because it's somewhere there. We just can't see the thing. It should be in the Bible-based section, but we've got no idea where it is. We'll have to clean it up again and have a look. Is that maybe that's at the bottom there? We'll have a look. Yeah, this is. Aha! We found it. Eureka! Jimmy, we found it. Because it's important that we produce the evidence, right? Okay. Okay, right, what page is it on? Okay, give me a second. Okay, where is it? Is it page 3? Yeah. What's this page? Page 3, column G, daily life. Disastrous floods in Mesopotamian region between minus 4,000 to minus 3,501. This is from the book The Timetables of History by Bet Nahrein. This is the new 3rd revision edition that we picked up somewhere. It's by Bet Nahrein, based upon Werner Stein's Culture Farplan. So it was a German that compiled it, and he died, and then this other guy tried to translate it, but they unfortunately died. And maybe this Werner Stein is the last guy that actually did it, according to the notes in here. Briefly, fortunately, in the late 1960s, a man emerged who was not only eager to tackle the task, but ideally equipped to accomplish it. Bernhard Grun, born in the Czech part of the old Austro-Hungarian monarchy and educated in law and philosophy at the universities of Prague and Vienna, had by then been settled in London for decades. An eminent musicologist, he was almost as well known as a historian with an encyclopedic talent and turn of mind. Completely bilingual in German and English, he could translate, delete, revise and add fresh material so that a new volume would emerge that would be a pertinent and useful one for the English language reading public. Additionally, to make sure that sufficient emphasis was given to American topics, the manuscript was then turned over to an American scholar, Wallace Brockway, whose authority and experience both in history and in compiling encyclopedic works were very similar to Mr. Grun's. Sadly, after several years of work on the project, both men died before the first edition of this book could be printed and published, and this was a source of deep regret to all. They are grateful to a number of people for their help in checking, rounding off, updating and completing what had been left unfinished. And in this connection, acknowledgements are due to Helen Barrow, Sophie Sorkin and Elise Sachs. Special acknowledgement goes to Lawrence Erdang and etc. And that's from a man called Peter Schwed, Schwed. Yeah, so in compiling this particular book, we're trying to translate it and compile it, 2 or 3 men died before it could be done. Sorry, pussycat. Just put the book on one of the pussycats lying on the bed there. He's a pretty thin pussycat, so he would have felt it. Not like the fat one next to him. Yeah, so that's basically it from that book there. That gives you that evidence that, according to that guy, that there was disastrous floods in Mesopotamia. And take a word that the translator Victor Alexander said the same thing, or a similar thing. And then you have the ancient Egyptian, what is said a myth, but it was actually a reality. When they found the boat of Nut in one of the pyramids, maybe the Nile had flooded over, and he grabbed all his people and a few animals and goodies or whatever, and sailed around in this boat until it went down. Yeah, and maybe they put it in this pyramid, and it was found supposedly. We'd have to do the research on that to verify that. Yeah, so yeah, man gets out of control. He makes all these hybrids, these giants or whatever like that. So maybe that's where giants came from, that picked up those big Egyptian rocks and all that sort of stuff, carved or whatever, and put them up in a pyramid type thing. Maybe. Yeah, that could possibly be true. Like that, right? Very strong, very tall. 10 or 15 feet tall, all that sort of stuff. So being mythical, there's probably that measure of truth there. A bit of fantasy added, with that sort of stuff, but and that's what made them legends. That's what happens. We have somebody that's really, really famous like Bruce Lee. You start getting these myths, these legends. They made him a legend. Like, he can run through a building and knock out 10 FBI men with guns, or CIA men behind doors, knock out the cigarette of the last one, all this sort of stuff. All this fantasy stuff. That's what makes him a legend. Oh yeah, Bruce Lee could beat up 60 dudes. Yeah, well, that sort of stuff. He was Superman. All this sort of stuff. So God does this thing. Noah gets in the ark, he's saved, etc., etc. Comes out, has his descendants, and so forth. Okay, it goes all the way down to Genesis 10 with all these different nations. The descendants, right? They migrated and eventually they became future nations. Genesis 10. And these are the birth records of the children of Noah, Shem, Ham. See, there's Cam right there. Kham. It's Ham. Don't pronounce the K. And Japheth, to whom was born children after the flood. The children of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Shavan or Havan, Tubal, Meshach, and Teres. And the children of Gomer were Ashkenaz. So that's where those Ashkenaz Jews come from. I don't know if they really like being called Ashkenazi. Maybe we just call them Ashkenaz, right? Jews. Rephath and Togarmah. And the children of Javan were Elisha, Tashish, and Kittim, and Rodanim. Kittim. So yeah, it's sort of like a plural as well, I think, the im. So yeah, it could be referencing also, yeah, these are the descendants of that particular, yeah, from them, yeah, that sort of thing. You have to look at the Hebrew to see if it actually hints at that. We're just sort of thinking things, right? And from these separated those that became the isle of the nations in their language, according to their culture and among their own people. Isle of the nations, right? And the children of Ham were Cush with a C. So originally it was in that Mesopotamia, Syria location, right? Mipraim, that's the Egyptians, Put and Canaan. And this is the children of Cush with a C were Sheba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, Sabteka, and the sons of Ra'amah were Sheba and Dedan. See, Havilah, supposedly, people give the name to that particular area. It's supposed to be, they gave that name after their ancestor here, right? Their forefather at a later date. Okay, that's supposed to be Kuwait, modern Kuwait. And to Cush was born Nimrod, who began a giant of the earth. So again, that verifies it's Mesopotamia, Babylon, right? That great city that he made, because he's a powerful king, etc. Right? So it's not in Africa. Yeah, that's a completely different place. And apparently it was originally, according to Sumerian cuneiform texts and all that sort of stuff, it was actually with a K. So it's K-A-S-H, like Cash or Kash. So the other one, when these descendants migrated and they intermarried, whatever, with these other people, darker races, perhaps, they became this new tribe of Cush with a K or with a C. It's easier to use a K so you can differentiate between the two. So people can't say, well, it all started in Africa, when it didn't, because there are human beings millions of years prior to them, modern man, right, who were around 300,000 years ago, something like that, what we indicated before. Okay, and Nimrod was a lion-hearted giant before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a lion-hearted giant before the Lord. And he was the head of this kingdom, which included Babylon, Erech, or Iraq, modern Iraq, Akkad, and Kala in the land of Sumer. From these lands there emerged the Ashurit, who built Nineveh and the towns of Rehoboth and Kala. And Rezin, the great city between Nineveh and Kala. Remember the king of Rezin? I think it's 2 Kings 16 or 9 or something like that. He joined up with the Israelites joined up with him and fought the Judeans, a certain city, and kicked them out of there. And it says that from that day forth they owned it. Yeah, it's probably where that king came from. And to Mizraim were born Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, and Katorim. And to Pathrusim and Kazluhim, from whom emerged the Philistines and the Cappadocians. And to Canaan was born Sidon, his heir, or the head of that family, the first son, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, the Amorites, and it goes through all of that, and the Canaanite legion. And after the tribes of Canaan spread out, and the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites, and after that the tribes of Canaan spread out. And the Canaanite lineage spread from Sidon to the outskirts of Gedar and until Gaza, to the outskirts of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, until Lasha. These are the children of Han. Remember the K silent, not Khan, but Han. Each according to their tribes, their language, their lands, and their people. And to Shem, Japheth's great brother, there were also born children. He became the father of all the children of passage, or the Arwer. The children of Shem were the Elamites. So these are the Jewish, right? These are the Jews. They refer to today. Jews. So not too sure about what Hashem means. We were thinking maybe it means living, breathing God, or something like that. I'm not sure. We don't know Hebrew, so it's just the idea here, right? Yeah, probably means something completely different. Go ask somebody, Don't rely on what we think. Okay, and to Shem, Japheth's great brother, there were also born children. He became the father of children of passage. There's a footnote indicated there. Okay, so we're going to look at that. Okay, these are all the nations that ended up, from the descendants they become these nations. Okay, 10:2:1, literal Aramaic name Germans, and then the Anglos, the Medes, the Greeks. 10:2:5, literal Aramaic names. The last three names depicted in Alexander says here it did not resemble any names he was familiar with at that time. It would take some more research to find out the correct transliteration of the modern derivatives. Okay, then you have 10:6, Mithraim, is it? 10:6? Yeah, Mithraim, the Egyptians. 10:10, literal Aramaic name, possibly where the name, that's Iraq, possibly where the name Iraq came from, although Iraqis are predominantly now Arabs. The name may have survived in the folklore of the minorities, the descendants that still inhabit the land of ancient Mesopotamia. Well, because it's been invaded, right, by the insurgents and all that sort of stuff, kicking a lot of people out of there from their homeland, and they basically flooded it, right, taking it over. So you have these people, they're children of passage, okay, indicated there. Literal Aramaic idiom or expression, Hebrews, but it's not a language, it's a people, because it says here in 10:24 footnote, literal Aramaic name, Hebrew, comes from this name, Awer, A-W-E-R, to cross over, someone who crosses over, implying passage, or they made a journey. So that's in relation to Abraham and his people, and his, the elders with him, all that sort of stuff, that went to the promised land, the land of Canaan, right? And it's the same in the Hebrew today, verified by a person that gave us the comments. Yeah, that's the same in Hebrew, but it's about A-V-E-R apparently. People that crossed over. Genesis 11, and the whole earth was one language, and everyone spoke the same dialect. They spoke that one language, right? Yeah. Talking to Chat GPT, etc., and other ones, Claude, whatever, they all deny. It all denies that true. Okay? So, linguists and blah blah blah. Well, linguists can only go back so far. They don't know the biblical languages, do they? Yeah? Unless they're well versed in it. But every AI we come across says no. Linguists say. See, that's where it becomes mechanical, technical, too technical, and you get bogged down. So people say, oh yeah, there you go. Chat GPT said no. Claude said no. Whatever said no. Don't forget they're programmed by men. How to respond to all that sort of stuff. All this information's fed into them. this thing that it starts to think for itself and all this. So yeah, maybe, but it's mainly man that's created them, put the coding in the program, whatever, and that's how they respond. So the whole earth was one language, and everyone spoke the same dialect or same language, one language. And as it was that, they came from the east. Or in the footnotes here it says they took from the east. It's just the way they express themselves, right? Funny way of talking, but that's just the way they come across. They found an empty spot in the land of Sumer, Hebrew Shinar, right? And there they settled there. So were they Sumerians? Maybe not, because the IA is a in prefix borrowed from the Greek, or given by the Greeks, meaning those who possess that particular geographical location. Okay? So they could have been a completely different people. Others supposedly came in, invaded, they claim to this and that, naturally. So they may have said, like the people who, gypsies apparently, who went to Romania, and then said, oh, we're the original, we're the indigenous people. This lady was telling us, she said, yeah, that's what they told us, but she and her friends argued, no, you're not. You're gypsies that came in, and you're claiming to be the original indigenous Roma? Get a life, she was saying, basically. Yeah, they came from the east, they found an empty spot in the land of Sumer, and they settled there. Mesopotamia, Syria, etc. Syria hadn't risen up and okay, we'll go and destroy them, get them out of here, yet. Okay? They hadn't invaded all that. What's the Syria? A state of, or something like that, right? Same as Syria. What's the capital? Huh? They hadn't risen up and kicked these people out of there yet. It probably wasn't even called Assyria in those days, because the IA again is a in prefix from the Greek, meaning people who possessed that particular geographical location at that particular time. Yeah, they said to each other, let's cast bricks and burn them in the fire, making buildings, right, making a cigarette, whatever. And bricks became their stone, and they used bitumen for mortar. That's like a type of tar, right? Probably natural stuff made out of dirt and a bit of water, clay and all that sort of stuff. And they used bitumen for mortar. And they said, a man to his friend, again, let us cast bricks, blah, blah, blah. Let us again build ourselves a city and a cigarette. That's a Persian thing, isn't it? It may not necessarily be a Persian thing here. Okay? That maybe the translator explaining you, well, it looks pretty similar to what, ziggurats in Persia. It's not saying, well, these particular men, before they did this, had spent some time in Persia, and came over here and let's build a ziggurat like we saw in Persia, because it hadn't had that name yet, right? The Greeks give it the end prefix, so then it's called Persia by them, right? A name they gave it. Okay, and then the Lord came down to see the city and the ziggurat that humanity had built. He's quite curious, and well, what are they up to? So it's either the Christ, the Son of God, came down, or the Master came down. That's what it's saying now, right? To check it out. And he said, behold, oh look, see this. The people are one people, they're united. And there is one language. They all speak the same language. One language for all of them. And this is what they thought of doing. Wow, amazing. But from now on, they will not be at a loss to do whatever they imagine. So he's saying, let us, who's he talking to? Not talking to himself. So it's probably the triune Godhead. They moved down there, three beings, possibly in human form, maybe, or maybe spiritual beings looking like humans, appearing in human forms, but they weren't. Something like that. And said, well, we have to stop them from doing that, because they'll be able to do anything they can imagine, and maybe that's not good for them. Maybe it become abominable, etc., etc., like the days of Noah, where they did everything they could think of, and it became abominable. Yeah, so he says, he says, divide the language, so they won't be able to listen to each other anymore. That guy will say, pass the bricks. He goes, what did you call me, a dick? No, she pass the brick. Stop calling me a dick, alright? Well, that sort of stuff. Because the guy's way up the top there. Hey, mate, pass us a brick. What? You want me to do a magic trick? Well, that sort of stuff. Yeah? And he's speaking in another language, so he couldn't understand what the hell he was talking about. And that's where they got baffled, and that's why they called it Babel, because it sounded like Babel, right? So they call it the Tower of Babylon. That's why the name is called Babylon, because it was there that the Lord made the language of all the earth sound like babbling. And from there the Lord spread them all over the earth. Yeah, so he migrated them. Spread them all over that known earth, that area, right? Scatter, shoo. So they all go probably to the east again. It's like Europe. They're like spreading across there, filling it all up. Way before somebody invented a boat, a big ass boat, and managed to sail all the way down to, say, Australia or New Zealand. Way before that. So it was that known earth, that known world. And it's got the list of descendants of Shem. Shem, who lived 100 years and was born Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. Shem's line after the birth of him goes right down to a person called Shelah. After Shelah lived 30 years, and to him was born Eber. And Shelah's line after the birth of Eber was 403 years. That's his lineage. And to him were born many sons and daughters. And Eber lived 34 years, and to him was born Peleg. And it goes on and on and on, down to Abraham. Okay, and these Awer, these people that crossed over the 2 rivers to get to Canaan. Surprisingly enough, we've read that Sarai, before she became Sarah, was actually Abraham's half sister, his father's daughter to another woman. In those days, the ideals were very, very different. The marriage ideas were very, very different. Until the law came along and it was like, well, you can't do that anymore because, maybe it was getting out of hand, or maybe it's just, that's probably why. So they had these decrees, these laws. A man shall not. Oh my goodness. It gets to the stage where there's actually a famine in the land where Abraham went. Was it east of Bethel? It's a house of God, right? Bethlehem, isn't it house of bread? So Bethel would be God's house, east of God's house. And then when he pitched his tent, it was Bethel, El to the west, and Ai from the east, etc. He built an altar for the Lord. There's a famine in the land, and Abraham went down to Egypt to live there because the famine consumed the land where he was. Not in Egypt. You wouldn't go to Egypt if there was a famine there to get food. That would be silly, wouldn't it? Defies common sense and logic, right? In reality. Why the heck would you go to a place that had a famine? You just came from a place that had the famine, and you went to another place that had the famine. Doesn't make sense, right? Wouldn't make sense. There was a famine in the land. Not too sure where he was. Was it Bethel? Yeah. And Abraham, Abram, before it's called Abraham, went down to Egypt to live there because the famine consumed the land. And he was close to entering Egypt. As he was close to entering Egypt, before he actually got there, right, he said to Sarai, his wife, "Hey, look, see this. I know that you are a beautiful wife to look at." She was pretty hot, right? She must be pretty hot. And as the Egyptians see you, they will say, "This is his wife." They will kill me and let you live. Yeah, because she's so hot. They'll, take her off his hands, kill him off, and make her by force their husband or something like that. We will say that you are my sister. Then they will be nice to me because of you, and will let me live because of you. And as Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that his wife was very beautiful. And the courtiers, or these court people of the king or Pharaoh, because Pharaoh actually means house of, right? So you can't say and house of. What's the king's name in these days? House of Ramses. You just say the king Ramses. Grabbed her and took her. They saw her and grabbed her and took her to the king. Abraham was treated well because of her and was given flocks and bulls, donkeys and servants, maid servants, husbandmen and camels. So that's a bribe, isn't it? Here you go, mate. We'll just take your wife. Here you go. Here's a payment, down payment. Right, off you go. And the Lord struck the Pharaoh, the king, and all his household with great plagues, or some sort of disease, because Sarai was the wife of Abraham. And the Pharaoh called Abram and told him, "What is this that you did to me? Why did you not reveal to me that this was your wife? And why did you say this is my sister?" Because she actually was. She was his half sister. Okay, father's daughter to another woman. Is that like a stepsister, right? And offered her to me for a wife. Well, it doesn't look like maybe he gave it because he was afraid. Look, see, now fetch your wife and leave. And the king commanded his men to send him and his wife away, together with everything he had. So he profited from that. Maybe God was helping him out, okay? Because he's famine. So he made him rich, because he's righteous, etc., etc. And he went out of Egypt, he and his wife, and everything, he and Lot with him, his nephew, and he headed south. And Abram got very wealthy with flocks, silver and gold. And he took up his settlements from the south up to Beth-el, up to the country where he pitched his tent in the times of old, between both Beth-el and Beth-ai, to the country where he first built the altar, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And also Lot, and etc., etc. And apparently Abram or Abraham does a similar thing again, and he becomes rich. Flocks and sheep and cattle and whatever, and gold.